I looked at the fact that some of the most dangerous people are the most charming. They're the most, they can be very intelligent. When we look at, for instance, Ponzi schemes where people have been ripped off, oftentimes people say, oh, but they were so funny or so kind or so smart and so forth. And I think, one of the things that I've learned in life, you're only safe if a predator isn't around you. There is no guarantee that you're safe. And I think if you outsource the things that are critical, such as, is this a good person? Because, kindness is not goodness. Is this a good person? Are they trustworthy? Do they always speak the truth? Do they hide things? Do they inflate things beyond reality? Are they genuine, or do they look like they're constantly trying to take advantage of one or others? I think too often we outsource that. At first we leave it to our parents, and then we leave it to the university security, and then we get into a work environment. But it's always our responsibility to assess for that and to be careful. In fact, and I'll send you the link. I finally came out with this what's called the Navarro Dangerous Personality Inventory. It's something you can have on your phone and just say, you know what, I'm seeing these behaviors. I mean, it's all behavior based. It's not personality based. I'm seeing these behaviors. Is this somebody that is trustworthy? And sometimes, if we're not well read in these areas, it's worthwhile to have someone look at it and say, one interesting thing, Brad, is I've noticed that when you have good friends and you ask them, hey, what do you think of that guy? It's how often they'll say, there's just something not right. And it's our subconscious, right? Our subconscious picks up orders of magnitude more information than our conscious brain. And so I think ourselves and our friends are saying, there's just something. And it's because of that, of neuroception, as it's now called, that we heard something that wasn't right, but we sort of put it behind us, and we should have explored it in the minute, but we were in the middle of a conversation. And it's interesting how toxic people, predatory people, often reveal things, but in the thick of a conversation or in a business meeting, we don't have the opportunity to pursue it. But you're right. And I'll tell you another thing is how often people have a physiological reaction. They can't place the why precisely, but their body just, it's like this person is cringe worthy. And what I tell people is, do not ignore that. This isn't the 1970s or 80s. We now have so much research on the polyvagal matrix, the fact that through the vagus nerve, enterically, we have a nervous system that innervates the heart, the lungs, the stomach, and so forth. And it communicates with the brain, and it tells us, hey, this doesn't pass the stink test. And I've had it happen to me. I was at a hotel. They were having a big party, and there were a lot of young guys on an elevator, and they'd all been drinking. And my stomach just tightened up and said, don't get in that elevator. And sure enough, I was glad I didn't, because later security was called because they were being rowdy and harassing people and so forth. As I said in the book, Dangerous Personalities, you have no social obligation ever to be victimized. And if it offends somebody, so be it. But listen to your gut, and teach your children to listen to that gut. If somebody calls you over to a car, you don't feel like going over, don't go over.
Mm-hmm.
Do not do that. And yeah.
Joe, I'm very curious about what you think is happening when we have those sort of gut sensations around dangerous people. In my own experience with the one I was talking about earlier, I remember when I met him, he flashed a smile at me, and I had this little feeling over my liver, just this little protective mechanism for a second. And we talked earlier about salsa dancing before we started.
Oh, yeah.
So this guy's a salsa dancer, and there is one woman who's a clinical psychologist who every time she dances with him, she sweats uncontrollably. She just gets soaked. And so I know that her body's having some sort of response to him. I'm wondering, what do you think about this, these responses, these gut feelings? What's really going on there?
Well, I think it's exactly that, the enteric nervous system. So that nervous system, we used to think everything was in the brain, and then we discovered, wait, time out, there's neurons in the heart. The same neurons we also in the brain are also in our stomachs, and all the way up and down our viscera. And scientists started to look at that. And I remember years ago, he was the head of the APA in California. A good friend of mine, Reed Malloy, said, hey, we're looking at some research where even therapists remark about having these visceral reaction. Okay, this is technically non-scientific because it can't be replicated. my sensory system is different than yours, so we can't test it. But we have enough of psychologists reacting to being in the presence of, let's say, a psychopath to say, well, we can't ignore that. And I think any visceral reaction that is negative. So in psychology, we talk about things that are either positively valenced or negative. And I think if you have a very negatively valenced reaction where you find yourself leaning away, walking away, you find your stomach tightening, you find yourself sweating, as you said with that woman, or some people said, I even felt like my face was distorting in disgust. Listen to that.
Mm.
Just listen to it and act on it, and do not equivocate. Do not equivocate. We always have the opportunity to get to know people and to test and validate them. But I think when we have these reactions, it's always useful to be around people, other people, and not find ourselves self-isolated. In doing